Well, hello, my name's Joe Beckton, and I'm here at Valley Forge representing a member of the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. Our regiment began in January of 1777. We were recruited all over Rhode Island. The regiment, for the most part, was not African American in January of 1777. The recruiting officers went out to recruit a whole new regiment, and the majority of the people they had were of European extract. However, there were some Native Americans and some African Americans. One of the rules, of course, was that you had to be a free person to join the regiment. The guys who did this recruiting, the recruiting officers, received a bounty for each person they recruited. So, when they recruited a person, they would get paid cash, and the person they recruited would be paid cash. So, one of the questions they had to ask all Africans was, are you now, or have you ever been enslaved? And of course the answer was, no, I've never been enslaved. With that, you would put your mark on the paper, he would get his bounty, and you would get your bounty. So in 1777, there's at least 40 African Americans who joined the 1st Rhode Island Regiment who are actually enslaved and have left basically without permission. They told us if you join the Army, you get a new suit of clothes, cut to the latest styles, made of the latest materials. In August, the Rhode Islanders still hadn't got a new suit of clothes. They told us that we'd be paid $6.66 a month. The Rhode Islanders still hadn't received $6. They told us that we were going to have a cash bounty. The Rhode Islanders still had not had the cash bounty. So of these 3 promises, we didn't have any of it. They told us that we'd get 1 pound of meat, 1 pound of flour or bread, 1 cup of beans or peas each day. That didn't happen every day. So the men staged a protest there at Peekskill, New York. Now, you know, it's very difficult to have a protest in the Army. A lot of times the officers don't see a protest as a protest. They see it as a mutiny. So with this, a lot of our sergeants were rounded up and arrested. They were going to put the sergeants on court-martial, and, of course, the only penalty for mutiny is death. Well, just about the time that the trials were going to go into effect, Colonel Green finally shows up. He shows up, he hears the situation, he sees that the soldiers do have some point to their protest, and he reinforced the idea that it was a protest, not a mutiny. The sergeants were busted down. They took their green stripes, they took their epaulets, and the sergeants were busted down the privates, and that's how we ended. Well, when we finally got to New Jersey, we were stationed at a place called Fort Mercer, which was right across the river from another place called Fort Mifflin. The British were coming up the river with 260 ships, 18,000 soldiers. There were 500 Rhode Islanders from the 1st Rhode Island Regiment and the 2nd Rhode Island Regiment that inhabited the fort. Colonel Green and Colonel Israel Angel were the leaders of that group. When the British confronted him and asked him to retire the fort, he told them he would not retire the fort, and no quarter would be asked and no quarter would be given. Ultimately, before the fighting was over on October 22nd, 1777, 400 British and Hessian soldiers lay dead on the ground, and Fort Mercer stood victorious. The very next day, the 23rd of October, the HMS Augusta, a 64-gun man-of-war, ran aground on a sandbar. The Pennsylvania Navy at Fort Mifflin and Fort Mercer turned their guns on it, and after several hours, the powder magazine exploded, and a major man-of-war had been sunk. This was the high point of the Philadelphia campaign. You can remember the other stories about Washington fighting the British at Brandywine, about the British literally marching across this field here at Valley Forge, about George Washington meeting the British again at Germantown. So at Brandywine, we lost. At Germantown, we lost. But at Fort Mercer, we won.